All right, welcome everybody to the Midnight Circuit. Tonight we're joined by C.J. Dotson, who has a new horror novel out, came out earlier this year called The Cut, and it explores what happens when you're running from your past leads straight into something far worse. And it's set in a mysterious hotel along Lake Erie, and her story proves that sometimes the most dangerous places are the ones that promise safety. So, CJ, welcome to the circuit.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, and we've got to get right into this because you're setting this in a decaying hotel along Lake Erie. What brought that up? What was your inspiration for that?
Lake Erie as the setting came before anything else in the cut. I used to live in the Great Lakes area. I used to live, I mean, I still technically live in a Great Lakes area, but I used to live really close to Lake Erie in northeastern Ohio. And there was a beach that I used to hang out at all the time. And the beach in the cut with the pier on one side and the power plant overlooking from the other side and the floodlights, that just is the beach that I used to hang out at as a kid, as a in my late teens and early 20s. Um, and when I started writing this book, I knew that I wanted to set it at Lake Erie. I knew I loved that particular setting, but I didn't want to set it in any of the types of homes that I was used to seeing around Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because in the part of Ohio that I lived in, the houses that were close to the lake were very expensive houses. And the tribulations of the affluent isn't really a story that I'm interested in telling. So I wanted the character to be not from that area, but I also wanted the main character to not feel able to leave that area. And so Sadie and Larpin Hotel kind of grew up together from that.
Now, did the because a lot of people know about a lot of these socioeconomic conditions of the Rust Belt these days. Did that play? Obviously, sounding from your answer, it seems like that played a little bit of a role also in how you did this story.
Yeah, there was definitely some of that there. The the power plant itself, and juxtaposed against the hotel's gradual decline in particular. Um, when I think of the Rust Belt, I tend to think more along the lines of the steel industry. Um, and so it didn't come up a ton in terms of the Rust Belt itself, but
Mm.
in terms of an aesthetic that I think of as almost home because I grew up in that area. I love Cleveland. I love coming in. My favorite way to come into Cleveland is from the south because then you pass by all of the giant smokestacks that have fire shooting out of them and a stack of bridges on bridges like something from a sci-fi set. Um, and so that sort of almost ugly aesthetic is one that I've always appreciated. And in that way, I see the Rust Belt's influence on Larpin Hotel.
Now, Sadie, in your book, is somebody who's fleeing domestic abuse. She's already got a toddler and another one on the way. Tell me how you balance the horror that already she's gone through with the paranormal horror she's going to go throughout the book.
Um, One of the things that I wanted to do with Sadie's story in terms of the escaping an abusive situation is I didn't want the story to be about her escape from the abuse. I feel like we kind of have like enough stories of people who or not enough stories because I don't want to give the impression that I think that there can be enough of stories that need to be told.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to tell the story of right after. And so the abuse would still be in her mind, of course it would be, but not the most present thing on the page. And so that's how I settled on the little like flashback dialogue moments, where something would happen and Sadie would remember cruel things that Sam had, her abusive ex-fiance had said, mostly had said. Um, and beyond that, I let the metaphor with the monsters s- speak for itself.
With when it comes to the hotel manager, and covering up all the dark secrets of the hotel, what was the most fascinating thing for you to write when it came to something like that?
That's kind of a hard question to answer without sort of getting into big spoilers for the story.
Right.
Um, his Mr. Dry's I'll say what was interesting and fun about writing Mr. Dry was the way that his character allowed me to lay certain hints for how the story was going, for the direction the story was going in.
Let's go through your background. As a matter of fact, what drew you to your genre now? What drew you to get interested in writing stories like this?
So I've been telling stories since I was a really little kid, and I've been writing stories since I was about 9. And what's kind of interesting looking back is that when I was just telling stories, I mostly would tell stories to younger kids on the school bus. When I was just telling stories and I had never thought to really write them yet, I mostly was telling scary stories. And when I started writing stories, I almost immediately pivoted to sci-fi and fantasy for many years. Um, and I wonder how much of that is because in some ways horror as a genre feels like the sort of cautionary tale that you would pass down verbally. And at least when I was a kid, especially, I read most of the books that are good. Most of the good, like fun books for kids are sci-fi and fantasy, especially fantasy. And so in my head, writing was for those genres and telling was for horror. And it wasn't until 2020 that I tried horror again, when my family and I had moved into a new house that we no longer live in now. And my son, just before his 5th birthday, we were sitting in the new house. And he asked me who lives in this house. And I said, "We do, baby. We live here now." And very calmly, like he was commenting on the weather or asking for a snack, he goes, "No, someone else lives here too, hiding." And I was like, "Oh, good." Um, and I put that on Twitter because I thought it was hilarious. And amongst the several people who were like, "You made that story about your kid up," amongst those, there was also a bunch of people who knew I was a writer who were like, "Oh my gosh, you should write a horror story." And my first reaction for a couple of months was, "No, I don't think I'd be very good at that." And then I tried it with a flash fiction piece that wound up getting accepted into an anthology called 99 Tiny Terrors. And the piece is called Eyes Like Empty Windows. And that flash fiction piece, I later expanded into a dual timeline haunted house novel manuscript that I called These Familiar Walls. And and I entered Pitch Wars with that. And Pitch Wars was a mentorship program that was running at the time that unfortunately mine was the second to last year that the program was working, but it was a highly competitive mentorship program that involved manuscript overhaul and revisions with a mentor who had more experience in the publishing industry, and then a showcase at the end with very short samples and descriptions of the book that agents and publishers, but mostly agents who had registered with the organization, could peruse the showcase and directly invite writers to query them with their materials for that particular book. Um, and I did not get my agent or my book deal with Pitch Wars, but what I did get was a fantastic community and the really fun realization that writing horror is fantastic and I love it and I found my genre. And a demystifying of sort of to some degree. It's impossible to completely demystify the publishing industry, but enough of a demystifying that I felt comfortable querying. And so eventually from there I did get my agent. And what's really fun to me about that little like journey to horror story is that my first horror manuscript, These Familiar Walls, I had had to shelve it for a couple of years. But it is going to be coming out with my publisher with St. Martin's Press in April of 2026.
Well, congratulations on that. The second
Thank
book,
you so much.
always the funnest, right? Because you're not as nervous, as you are when the first book comes out. It's like, is this going to be okay? And then it's like the second book comes out, and you're like, okay, this is old hat now. So.
I'm still pretty nervous, but I'm nervous a lot of the time.
It's the same here. Same here. No, because that's another thing I've noticed too is the horror community is just one of the most welcoming. It is such a strange community because we're all made up of different things. Like I've even noticed, on my side with and splatterpunk and psychological, nicest people you'll ever meet.
Oh yeah.
We write the strangest things.
I think that's how we get to be so nice is we purge the darkness and then we can go out into the world and go, all right, I'm ready to be chill.
Experience the darkest side of humanity, and we're just like, no, okay, we've had enough of that. So,
right.
But you're also a member of the Horror Writers Association. Maybe explain to people what y'all do now, or what you do through the Horror Writers Association.
I'm relatively new to the HWA, and so I'm still kind of learning the best ways to make use of the membership there. I really like the emails that you get that tell you like when a new market is opening or there's certain members only databases and there's the newsletter, but I'm still kind of
Yeah,
finding my bearings
navigate.
with what all I'm going to be using that membership for and what sorts of benefits I'm gaining from it.
Are you planning on going to StokerCon next year?
Yes, I do already have my ticket to StokerCon next year. I'm really excited. I went for the first time this past year and it was incredibly fun and everybody is just so nice and the panels were so thought-provoking and it was just a great time.
So that's the thing. I gotta renew my membership so I can get ready to go for next year too. Money becomes a fun problem sometimes. Um, your favorite book, The Things They Carry. How did that really? How does it? How does it really inspire you to write what you write?
Um, The Things They Carry, for any of your listeners who aren't familiar with it, is a collection of short stories about the Vietnam War. And so on the surface, that's what it is. It's a book of short stories about the Vietnam War. But what it really is an exploration of the difference between different types of truth, at least the way that I read this book, the way that I interpret it. And I haven't reread it in ages, and I need to. Um, there are different types of truth, and two big ones are happening. What I think, if I remember correctly, the author calls them happening truth and story truth. Um, and so there's the actual reality of what happened. There's just the bare facts of what happened. And you can say those facts and you can recite casualty numbers in the context of the Vietnam War, you can recite casualty numbers, you can talk about the diseases that people got or the wounds that they incurred, or you can talk about shell shock and the cultural repercussions of the war. And you can say all of that stuff, but it's not going to really hit your listener or your reader in the heart the way that it hit you in the heart when it happened to you. And that's where story truth comes in. And so you switch it up a little bit. You change some details, you give it more punch until the person that's listening to you tell the story feels the way you felt about the reality when it happened to you. Um, and I think that that is one of the great purposes of fiction. I mean, obviously, escapism for the pure sake of escapism is absolutely necessary and great. But I think that in terms of contextualizing the world in which we live and really making someone else feel how we feel about the things that have happened to us or are happening to us, story truth is vital to humanity, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and so and so that's why that's my favorite book, and that's part of why I write fiction at all. It's is that that book crystallized and gave words for me to something that I had felt already. Um, and I think and that book just did such a brilliant job of giving that to the reader, of giving that experience to the reader. That's something that I try to bring to my writing is the conveying the feelings of either a singular or shared lived experiences.
That was actually going to be one of my next questions to you was what do you want people to get other than just entertainment? Are there any, you know, messages you wanted to put out there for the readers to understand?
Yeah, one of the things that I find myself talking about a lot since this book came out is my deep disdain for the phrase, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," when it is said to survivors of anything, really, but especially abuse.
Yes.
Um, because I feel like that gives ownership of the strength that it took to survive, not to the person who had that strength and survived, but to the person or thing, or in the case of Sadie and this story, the abuser who who caused the harm in the first place. Um, and if there's even one person who reads the cut and understands that that's what I was trying to convey and finds that in themselves, um, that would mean that would be everything.
I, and I totally agree with you on that because I get tired of hearing that too. It's like, you know, it's only supposed to be for, you know, things that suck in your life. You know, like getting up in the morning and going to work. That's what that
Yeah.
phrase was supposed to mean. And somehow we've twisted that way too much over the years into just
Somehow we took it from like pro working out
yeah.
to like applying it liberally to everything
It,
and making it meaningless and hurtful.
yeah. I mean, it's almost like everybody's turned into that guy. I think it's from the Wolf Pack. It's like, but did you die?
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Nope.
Because yeah, because even I've worked on a couple things like that where the theme is yes, there are things that are worse than death, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize. Yeah, and I'm going to go cliche here for a second. Physical scars do heal, but mental scars can live forever, and I think that's one of the reasons. There's a trauma movie called Combat Shock, and that's one of the things that I got from that movie was the guy you brought up Vietnam. That's why it popped up into my head. He's a Vietnam veteran. We're talking about the early '80s,
Oh
you know, and
yeah.
he just goes off the rails because, well, I mean, we all know what the A political climate was at the time, especially with Vietnam veterans, and B everything you know you see in the war, and you're just sitting there going, you want to feel sorry for him, but I mean, he's doing such heinous acts, you can't help but not to like him or to not like
Yeah.
him. I always like asking these questions because I think these questions are some of the most important ones for anybody who is just starting and not just writing, but content creation and anything to do in horror. Maybe they want to be, you know, a voice actor or anything. What is your biggest piece of advice for them? And not only that, but maybe for somebody who's maybe starting to get burnt out a little bit because they're doing a little too much?
So when I talk about the parts of having a solid community that have benefited me as a writer, I'm going to be coming at it with examples for writers, but
Mhm.
I think any creative endeavor will have its like analogous bits and pieces.
Mhm.
Um, but you need a good solid community around you because other writers are the people who are going to really understand the highs and the lows of what you're trying to do. You can talk to your friends who aren't really writers or your spouse or your family, and you can say like, "Oh, I got another rejection today." Or you can say, "I've got a hold on a story," and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," or like, "Oh, cool," and they won't really get how much already went into just getting to the rejection part. They won't really understand how exciting it is to get a hold, or how crushing it can feel and how personal it can feel even though it's not personal to get a rejection. Um, and so when you have a solid community that is doing what you're doing, you have a much better outlet for venting your frustrations and expressing your joys. And you can also be there to help other people express their joys and vent their frustrations. And it builds this deep camaraderie that I've rarely felt anywhere else. I think the closest I can think of is high school drama club, um, which I was behind the scenes. I was not cool enough to be a stage person. I was the like set builder and curtain operator and spotlight lady. But
Starting to wonder if that's actually a requirement now. Is we all got to be drama kids at some point?
but But yeah, it's that camaraderie that's just it's beautiful, and it's you build these incredible friendships out of it, and they really keep you sane. They really help you stay sane through all of the difficulties that come with pursuing a creative passion, especially if you're going to try to pursue a creative passion in a professional way. And then there's also sort of more practical concerns. Like if you have a good solid group of writer friends, then you probably have a pretty good decent pool to pull from for beta reading, and you can beta read for them. I've learned as much about my writing from beta reading for friends as I have from getting really solid beta reads from friends. Um, and if it's a community instead of like, just people that you're paying to beta read or something, if it's a community, then you also will have people who eventually they know you and they know what you're going for and they know what you're trying to do with your work and what you would like to be able to do and where you're strong and where you might need a little help. And you'll know that for them. And sometimes you'll get the incredible experience of reading a book by a friend and having it be one of the best things that you've ever read, and then you might get the incredible experience of watching that book get published. And you might have the experience of reading an incredible book for a friend and knowing that it's one of the best things you ever read, and watching that friend um not breaking into the industry as fast as you would hope that they could because you love their work so much. Um and it's just I don't know what I would do without my writing community, without my writing friends. I don't think I would have gotten to this point. I am pretty sure I know I wouldn't have gotten to this point in my career without them. It's so important, not just for pursuing this, but for yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't overstate enough. That's my biggest piece of advice.
Absolutely. I know we only got a couple of minutes left here, and I got to know what is your favorite, I guess, favorite writing ritual that you have?
I get up at 4:15 every day to write.
Ooh.
So I wake up at 4:15 and I come downstairs and I make coffee, and I have 6 cats, so I'm briefly besieged by creatures. Um, and then I come in here into my writing room, and I love, especially on like weekends or summer break, I work for a school district. Um, on weekends and summer break when I don't have to wake the kids up, and so I can take my time and let my brain really like take its time waking up, and then I can just go until they wake up on their own. And so, yep, getting up at 4:15 and making my coffee, that's the only real like ritual that I have. I
And
used to have more like things that like I can't write if I don't like I used to smoke. I'd like write on my smoke breaks. I used to um and then I quit smoking and I had writer's block for 2 years.
oh,
So I try not to invest too much in writing rituals and more in like just making sure that I have the time and the coffee to get it done.
the coffee is extreme. For those of you who are not in the writing industry, coffee is the nectar of the gods for us.
Essential.
Exactly.
Essential.
Exactly. Well, all right. Just tell everybody where you can find the book and where they can find you and all that other fun stuff we're supposed to do with self promotion.
Sure thing. Thank you. Um, I am on Instagram. I am not as active on any of my social media as I should be, but I still post every like day or so. Um, but you can find me on Instagram. I'm CJ underscore dots, DOTS. Or on Blue Sky, where I am cj-dotson.bsky.social. Um, I also have a website, cjdotsonauthor.com, and I occasionally remember to blog there, but mostly that's where I post upcoming events and stuff like that. And The Cut is available anywhere books are sold. Um, and I also right now have my next novel up available for pre-order. So you can buy The Cut right now, or you can pre-order These Familiar Walls, my upcoming dual timeline haunted house novel.
Oh, nice. And we're definitely gonna have to get you back on to talk about that one.
I'd love that. It was really fun to write that one.
Oh, I bet. I love things like that too. It's just it's absolutely awesome. But CJ, we appreciate you coming on,
I
and
appreciate you having me. Thank you.
absolutely. And as we always like to say to everybody, there is an open invitation anytime you want to come on. I think I follow you on Blue Sky. If I don't, I'll
We'll
definitely.
figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done the horror writers chat or not on Blue Sky because I know it's a.
Oh, sometimes.
So yeah, I probably have followed you through that.
Cool.
I'm the
Cool beans.
idiot that retweets everything. So,
I like that.
but it's nice to have you on, and we will definitely bring you back on another time.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, CJ.
Thanks.